Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, they have worked abominations. There is none who does good. The Lord looks down from the heavens on the sons of man to see if there are any who understand, who seek after God. There they are in great terror, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You have shamed the counsel of the humble and afflicted. But the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that salvation for Israel would come out of Zion when the Lord restores the captives of his people. Jacob shall rejoice and Israel be glad. They have all turned aside. Together they have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. Have they no knowledge? All the wicked that devour my people, as they feast, they do not call upon the Lord. There they are in great terror, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You have shamed the counsel of the humble and afflicted. Oh, but the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that salvation for Israel would come out of Zion when the Lord restores the captives of his people. Jacob shall rejoice and Israel be
What's going on, everybody? How y'all holding up? Welcome. We got a fun live stream today. We got Dr. Licona here. How you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for coming back on the channel. We missed you. Been away for a while. How dare you?
Good to be with
I don't
you.
think we've had Dr. Licona on since you brought me on.
I don't think so. Anyway, so welcome. I got a fun stuff to do today. Holy Koolaid. It goes by his name is Thomas Westbrook. He's an atheist YouTuber. I'm not going to call it's a long name, so I'm just going to call him something simpler, like the Kool-Aid Man. He posted a video where he wanted to rank the resurrection hypothesis versus the competing hypotheses, and I was like, I watched it, and I was like, oh my goodness, we got to get Dr. Licona on to see this. This is going to be amazing. Oh my goodness, I actually really like the video. He did a great job showing problems with a lot of the competing hypotheses. Put up a bunch of really bad hypotheses in like A tier, S tier, and then like just dismiss the resurrection because he's like, miracles don't happen. Anyway, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're helping us. You're helping us make the case. So I thought we'd bring Dr. Licona on to review it, and I told Fan not to watch it so we get his live react, and then we will also be ranking these based on our assessment as well today. Are you ready? Is your body ready, Fan, for this? I don't know if it is.
My blood already hurts.
It's going to definitely hurt.
I don't know. My blood doesn't have a nervous system, right? But mine does now. It's like it has generated, it has evolved in anticipation of the pain.
Makes sense. Dr. Licona, what were your thoughts on this video when I sent it to you?
Well, I watched it earlier today, and it was interesting.
It definitely was.
Oh man,
I have so little problems with this. Let's just let you guys know, I don't have a lot of problems with what he's saying. I have some disagreements, but a lot of what he says, I'm like, yeah, you go. You're right. You're absolutely doing great, Kool-Aid, man. I appreciate everything you're saying. So we got to review this. And so, yeah, let's dive right in unless anyone has any objections. Great. All right. We're diving in. Here we go. It's going to be amazing.
Wow. He has short hair now.
What?
Since when does he have short hair?
I don't know. People change their hair, Fan. Focus.
Easter Sunday. Christians love to tout the resurrection of Jesus as the only possible explanation, while doubters, skeptics.
Dr. Licona, have you ever said it's the only possible explanation?
I've said it's the most reasonable. It's the best explanation.
Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, I don't know who's saying it's the only possible explanation. I've never said that.
Well, I have said it's the only hypothesis that can account for the facts adequately. I have said that.
That's fair. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's the only possible explanation, though. No.
And atheists oftentimes will push back with other explanations as to what could have happened. So today I thought it would be fun to take a bunch of different explanations that are given for the resurrection of Jesus, and I'm going to create a tier list out of it, because why not?
All right, let's see it. I'm excited for the tier list. Yeah, subscribe, everyone. Be sure to subscribe. I don't know.
First up, you have the twin theory. Now, the idea that Jesus had a twin is nothing new. This dates all the way back to the Gospel of Thomas, I believe in the 2nd century CE, shortly after Jesus' death, close to the time that the other Gospels were written, and the Acts of Thomas, the Apostle Thomas, who was with Jesus. And it positions the disciple Thomas as a twin of Jesus. Thomas Didymus. Didymus actually meant twin. Now, here's where it gets interesting. What if, instead of Jesus dying and resurrecting, one of the twins died, and then the second twin showed up afterwards? Because we already have other gospels that acknowledge that Jesus not only had a brother, but did in fact have a twin, it's not unreasonable at all to assume that he did actually die and that his twin was mistaken for him afterwards. I'm going to put...
So before we get to that, this is William Lane Craig's favorite hypothesis to mock. Like, he always brings us up as if you want to believe something crazy, it's the twin theory. Dr. Licona, you've talked about this before. Wasn't there like a leading proponent of this who actually has abandoned it entirely?
Yeah, his name is Greg Cavan. He's an atheist philosophy professor out in California. I debated him, I believe it was back in 2012. And right before our debate, he came up to me and he said, hey, Mike, don't bring up the twin hypothesis because I don't take it anymore. So what he had done back in the 1990s is he did his doctoral dissertation, and he said, no, it wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't hallucination. They weren't lying. None of the naturalistic hypotheses work. And so and we know that Jesus didn't rise from the dead because God doesn't exist. So that only really leaves one possible explanation, and that is Jesus had an identical twin, separated at birth, and after his death, the identical twin showed up and said, "Hey, here I am. I've risen from the dead," and tricked people. So he's about the only person I know who, modern person who took that, at least for a little bit. But then, like I said, by the time I debated him, even he rejected it, and for good reasons.
What are those good reasons? Could you please fill us in?
Well, Like I said, I did watch the video you sent me earlier of what we are, looking at tonight. And so he does go with the Gospel of Thomas. But it is interesting to note that John, and I made some notes, I'll be looking at some, but John 11:16 refers to Thomas called the twin. Now, Thomas, the name Thomas in Aramaic means twin. But it doesn't say in the Gospel of John that it was Jesus's twin. In fact, it could have been anyone's twin, or it could have been a nickname that was given Thomas at some point because he looked like someone they knew. By the time you get to the Gospel of Thomas, which scholars have dated it variously, a few fringe scholars have placed it in the 1st century.
Correct. Yeah.
Toward the end. Most scholars put it somewhere in the first half of the 2nd century. I think that Nick Perrin and Craig Evans have made some very compelling arguments that have not been adequately addressed for why we should think Thomas was written in the latter part, the very late part of the 2nd century. But either way, he's called Judas Didymus Thomas, and Didymus is Greek for twin. So it's kind of weird. You have Judas Didymus, Greek meaning twin, and then Thomas, Aramaic for twin. Why would you have the double saying there, just in different languages? But again, even in the Gospel of Thomas, it doesn't say that Thomas was Jesus's twin. And we have to take into consideration the possibility that if that was his actual name, which again, this is a later source, the Gospel of Thomas, it could have been used to distinguish him from someone like Judas Iscariot. So, for example, there were several very popular male Jewish names in Palestine at that time. And so qualifiers were typically used. So, for example, you have Tau Ilan, a female Jewish scholar. You have Richard Bauckham, a male New Testament scholar. And they have both done onomastic studies on names in antiquity based on the epigraphical and documentary evidence. They found, like, for example, the name Mary and Salome, 28% of the females, Jewish females in Judea during that time were named either Mary or Salome. So it shouldn't surprise them that you have so many Marys in the Gospels, and you do have a Salome as well. Well, Simon was the number one, the most popular male Jewish name in Palestine during that period. I say in Palestine because outside of Palestine in the diaspora, male Jewish names differed. But within Palestine, you had a lot of them that were like named after people during the... yeah, what?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was gonna, so like, with regards to the resurrection hypothesis, though, like, why do you think it, like, because I remember the debate between Craig and Kevin on this is like, what are the problems for the resurrection hypothesis? Why couldn't it just been after the death?
Just finish the thought here with the name. So it could be, I was thinking about this and said, Judas Didymus Thomas, he could have just been named Thomas, the twin, in order to distinguish him from other Judases in the group, like Judas Iscariot and Judas, the son of James, both of whom were disciples. And you do have two Simons, Simon Peter and Simon called the Zealot. You have two James. You have James, the son of Zebedee, and James, the son of Alphaeus. You have another one, not one of the disciples, but he's named James the Younger. So you've got all these names, but very popular names. So it could be used to distinguish him from the other. Wouldn't mean that he was Jesus's twin. So now another thing, I think this is important. He appeals to the 3rd century Acts of Thomas. And it's in the 3rd century Acts of Thomas where Thomas is referred to as Jesus's twin brother. But it is important to note that this is the 3rd century. It's written more than 200 years after Jesus. And in this account, Jesus sends Thomas to India. He tells Thomas to go to India to be his messenger there. Thomas refuses. And so Jesus sells Thomas into slavery. His master buys him and takes him to India. Well, while they're there, Jesus appears to a married couple on their wedding night and tells them that sex is filthy and that they are never to have sex, that married couples are always, for their entire life, to refrain from sex. This is what it means to be a Christian. So, I mean, it's kind of, and he says it's not good to have children. I mean, this is something that is very different from the Jesus and the New Testament writers. And here's where it gets funny. This is what he appeals to. He thinks the Gospels in our New Testament contains legends and therefore shouldn't be believed. But then he goes ahead and he favors a writing with all this weird stuff in it that's written more than 200 years after Jesus. It's really weird. So anyway, there's no current defenders of which I'm aware of the identical twin hypothesis. I've spoken to dozens, probably 4 or 5 dozen identical twins over the decades, and they're all in agreement that if you knew the person, the twins, you can easily tell them different. Parents can tell them apart. Spouses can tell them apart. Close friends can tell them apart. Now, maybe if they're just sitting there not saying anything or moving around, they can't tell them. But as soon as they start talking and hanging around them, they can tell the difference quite easily. So anyway, I think it's pretty funny that he puts this as an A tier.
Oh wait, you're not. We were supposed to let Than
stop.
I'm sorry.
Here,
it's an A
I'll
tier.
put this one in A tier. Starting off.
Puts it in A tier, Than. A tier. That's an A tier one. What a theory not defended by any critical scholars today. Even the leading proponent of it has rejected it.
I'm requesting a business expense. I want to have. I saw an ad today for this little like punching bag that you can put on your desk. So that way, whenever stuff like this happens, I can take out my frustration on something. Because what? I was expecting something reasonable, like D tier.
No, this is A tier. And it's the craziest theory because it's like you have to it's so improbable. Okay, you have to think that when Jesus, he had a lost twin who just happened to show up in Jerusalem after Jesus died. Then he decided to claim to be Jesus in an environment where the authorities just killed him. And he's claiming to be the resurrected Messiah for whatever reason. You have to invent ad hoc reason after ad hoc reason, ad hoc assumption on ad hoc assumption. It is so, it in itself, it would be as improbable as anything else. Like this to account for like how this religion got started. You have to posit Jesus had a twin brother who just happened to show up in Jerusalem after he was executed, pretended to be him, pretended to be the resurrected him, and then just disappeared a couple days later without
he ascended.
The twin ascended.
Somehow the twin ascended.
Well, you think about it too. Let's say you were an identical twin, whether you were separated at birth or not. If you just saw your lookalike scourged and crucified, you would have to be a moron to come back in front of the Romans and the Jewish leaders who had turned you over to the Romans and say, hey, I'm back. And just grab you again and say, okay, buddy, let's do this again. Let's see what happens. We're going to make it a little rougher this time.
So where would you, let's put our thing up here. Where would you put the twin theory, Dr. Licona?
Well, I mean, it's got to be on the very bottom one.
I agree. It's got to be a D tier. All right. So you've heard it here, folks. It's really a D tier. We have spoken. Let's get back to our lovely video here and continue on.
Wait, real quick, Mike. People in the live stream chat are asking if super chats are bugged.
No, they're here. No, we got them. See? Okay. Hey guys, got any book recommends for the nature of hell? Check out my video, Does God Send People to Hell? I give a lot of good book recommendations in that video, so check that out. Say each out loud, Holy Koolaid, HQ, QH, Hebrew, Aramaic, pronunciation. I have no idea what this means. What do you want the Hebrew Arabic pronunciation of Holy Koolaid? What? I don't know what that is, man. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Starting off strong. Next up, we have grief hallucinations. It's the idea that Jesus did actually die and then that people did actually see him afterwards, but that they were hallucinating. I don't particularly find this one all that compelling because while there are instances like the case with Our Lady of Fatima where people would have group hallucinations and that they would see something like a light in the sky.
Real quick.
That's a bold assumption to just assume that's an hallucination.
Yeah. This is the second time this has come up this week. Do I take this as a sign to make a video on Miracle Fatima?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some actual pretty good evidence for it. And it's kind of funny.
Mike, I'm friends with two skeptical philosophers that think this probably happened, and they have admitted that they're just experiencing cognitive dissonance and they don't know what to do with it.
Wow. That's wild, man. Yeah.
Mass hysteria, freak out, thinking that they were witnessing a saint. It is possible for stuff like this to happen, and it is actually common for people who are going through loss and bereavement to experience grief and to think that they have heard the voice of a loved one who has passed or that they have seen someone who passed away. But the idea that the entire religion purely sprung up out of a grief hallucination, it is possible, but I don't think it's the most compelling of all of them.
All right, where do you think he's going to put this, Than?
I swear, dude, if he puts it below the twin theory, I quit.
I'm going to put it in C tier. And then
put it in C tier. God, I love this video, man. I love it. It's amazing. It goes right in C tier where it belongs. Than.
Thomas, are you becoming a Christian apologist or something, dude? Because like, what's happening?
I know it's like if I wanted to like pretend to be a skeptic and make it tier list, this is the kind of stuff I do. I put the really bad theories at the top and the really good theories at the bottom. Like the good theories that actual scholars would use, the better ones. I don't think there actually any of them are sufficient, but this is just, you're putting them in the reverse order.
I mean, to be fair, he said that the Christian belief sprung out of only these things.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, that's silly. But most people don't attempt to explain it with only a grief hallucination. They're going to go like grief hallucination, reburial,
to be
et
fair,
cetera, et cetera.
To be fair, Kool-Aid Man does get back to that and try to put a combo theory out later. So we'll get to that later.
Okay.
But Dr. Licona, do you think he made a good point on the problems with the hallucination hypothesis?
Well, I think you could have said a whole lot more. No. You know, it assumes that the apparitions of Mary are hallucinations, and it gets a little more difficult to explain with some of them. He didn't say which Marian apparition he had in mind, but the one that happened in the late 1960s in Zaytun, Egypt. That's difficult to explain as a group hallucination. You had thousands who saw what they interpreted as Mary that was moving atop the Coptic church over there. And now what's interesting, the object, which seemed as like a spirit-like entity, it moved. They know it wasn't any kind of, they can't figure out any kind of natural phenomena it was.
They even turned off the light sources to try to eliminate those, right? Like
that's right.
It's crazy.
It happened over a period of time. You know, it wasn't just one evening. It happened for a while, but the entity never spoke. It never communicated anything. So, look, I'm not Catholic, but my theology would, as a Protestant, would not rule out the possibility that it was Mary. However, I'm not inclined to think it's Mary because, well, I have no reason really to think it is. The spirit never identified itself. But to say that was a hallucination is just naive. It's what we do know about hallucinations that seem to rule that out, because hallucinations are false sensory perceptions. That we think that we sense something that's not actually there. And what's not statistics, but studies done on hallucinations for over a century, multiple studies have found, is the people most likely to experience a hallucination are people grieving the loss of a loved one. But even then, only an average of 14% experience a visual hallucination. And so what you're looking at with the disciples here is not 14%, but an unthinkable 100%. And one of the more recent textbooks written on it and published by the American Psychological Association, edited or written by Ehlman and Lowry, Hallucinations, the Science of Idiosyncratic Perception. I contacted the authors, and one responded. They said they were looking for stuff on group hallucinations, and they couldn't find a single well-documented case of that in the literature. And you think about it, if it's a false sensory perception, then how can multiple people experience the same hallucination? I think they're like dreams in that sense. So we couldn't have 100 people take a sleeping pill, and let's say we're all going to go to sleep and dream we're in Hawaii. And then we're going to try to dream we're in Hawaii. And so you think about it as you're going to sleep. Well, not everybody's going to dream they're in Hawaii. And even the few that do, there's no way that when they describe their dreams, they're going to end up having a dream that is so similar that they think they were participating in the same dream. So it's the same thing with group hallucinations. It's just not going to happen that way. And then another thing is you've got Paul. Paul wasn't grieving Jesus' death.
Exactly.
He believed Jesus was a failed Messiah and a false prophet. So Jesus would have been the last person in the universe Paul would have expected to see and wanted to see. So there is some real problems with the hallucination hypothesis, even if you include the Marian apparitions.
So where would you put this? S, A, B, C, or D?
Gosh, well, it's got to be above.
It's got to be.
It's got to be above the twin hypothesis. It's pretty weak. I'd put it in C.
All right, you heard it here, folks. It's
And
in
it's
C.
not that hallucinations. If it was just an appearance to Paul and nobody else, or an appearance to Peter, or maybe an appearance to Peter and one other disciple, I think it could be plausible. But it's when you put everything together, 100% of the disciples, group appearances, the appearance to Paul, and the proper hypothesis has to account for everything, not just for one thing or two things. So it's weak, and that's why most scholars have abandoned that today.
Does Thomas, real quick, talk about what facts he's working off of to judge these? Or like,
I don't recall hearing the facts. I mean, he's just kind of going through and
he's just trying to give a quick ranking. He mentions briefly, but
okay, I was just curious.
Question from Mike: if the biblical authors were men, how could Mark or Matthew be given the guy versions of X biblical story? I don't know what this means. Sorry, Steve.
Oh, I do. So I jokingly say, but I mean, tongue in cheek, because I think just about everyone who is married understands that, guys typically, and this is stereotyping, of course, but it's fairly accurate. And there are exceptions, many exceptions, but for the most part, guys just, get to the bottom line, give me bullet points. Sometimes we will massage the facts a little bit to shorten the story and to give the sense of what happened. Our wives will, in the background, say, it didn't happen that way, because they want everything precise and they want all the details, to the point where you're going, I don't need to know that. That's just too much. So, I call it the guy versus the girl version of the story. So what the person is saying there is, if the authors of the Gospels were guys, how can you say the guy versus girl story? Well, because Mark does give us more of a very detailed version, whereas Matthew, when he is using Mark, he usually, or in many cases, he will bend the details a little, and by compressing the story and simplifying it. So he might mention only one person saying something, whereas maybe there were three or more, something like that, but he's focusing on the main person there. I could give you several examples of that happening, and it happens mainly in Matthew.
We need a third party to steal the body during Passover, and a motive, a reason why the apostles were convinced he rose, an explanation for the 500, and an explanation for Paul, or he actually rose. Exactly. And we'll get to that when we talk about the combo theory. This is a good kind of precursor to that. Like you end up multiplying assumptions beyond necessity to account for something the resurrection can account for all the data with. Let's get back to Kool-Aid Man here and his next one.
And then there's the idea that Jesus was pure myth, that he never existed. There never was a guy named Jesus, that he was invented out of whole cloth, and that there never was a guy at all. There's a couple of different ways that mythicism is proposed, that it's put forward. I particularly don't find any of them all that convincing. And I just find it an unnecessary hypothesis, because you have plenty of figures like this at the time of Jesus who were springing up, who were claiming to be a Messiah. A Messiah literally just meant a king. It meant anointed one, and the king was anointed with oil. So it was people who wanted a following. They wanted power. They wanted to potentially raise up an army or overthrow the Romans, or just have some sense of, I am a leader and I have meaning, and my purpose is to rule over all these people. You have this happening all over the place. People were forming revolts and rebellions against the Romans. People were performing miracles. People were gathering followings. In fact, there wasn't just one Jesus.
Dr. Licona, I remember you talking about this. There weren't a lot of people perform or said to even be performing miracles during or around the time of Jesus. I just did a video on this in January. Very few figures from the ancient world were doing miracles, let alone the amount that Jesus was doing. And the accounts of these people are also written far off, like Apollonius of Tyana. I mean, you have some people like, Simon Magna, for example, or Maga, I believe, or excuse me, Magna, for example. Like he is said to be doing some sort of like power, but we don't get a lot of details. So it's not like this was like just a big thing. These messianic figures were doing hundreds of miracles. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not aware of a lot of miracle works. I mean, you had Honu the circle drawer, but that was before Christ. And it's not like he does a whole lot of miracles. You do have Apollonius of Tyana, which you mentioned, who lived at the end of the first century, or died at the end of the first century. But the only first surviving biography of him is by Philostratus, written about 125 years after Apollonius' death. But yeah, there were a few Jewish messianic figures in the first century, but I mean, so what? That doesn't mean Jesus was a myth. And he's not even persuaded by it, right? Because you do have multiple attestation about the historical figure Jesus. You have not only the Christians, and some of which is rooted in eyewitness testimony, but you also have non-Christian sources who mention Jesus. And of interesting, you have Tom Schmidt. I don't know if you've read did you read his monograph?
We read it, had him on everything. Yep.
Now he's great, and his stuff is being reviewed academically now, and it just came out last year, and it is at the reviews that have come out thus far by scholars have been quite positive. So, the papers that have been given responding to his hypothesis that the testimonium is virtually as we find it today in the Greek, with saying Jesus is a miracle worker, and that his disciples reported that he was alive 3 days later, things like that. It was just as that is. But he says the tone of it, as you recall, it's more of a neutral tone that Josephus has. And he talked about the sources. I mean, it's a real compelling case. It's on your YouTube channel. It's on my YouTube channel. I think I was the first to interview him on that. But really a good thing. But there you got Josephus with fantastic sources who would have been there to see Jesus on trial and through his crucifixion. They knew that there was this historical figure named Jesus. You got Paul. He knew the brother of Jesus, James. Well, how do you have the brother? How do you know the brother of someone who never existed? So it's not a good hypothesis that Jesus never existed. In fact, even Richard Carrier, he can only name less than a dozen contemporary scholars who even consider it a possibility. And some of I shouldn't even say I mean, it's far less than a dozen. You might have just about 5 or 6 contemporary scholars who are alive who think that, and no one really regards them as serious scholars.
Right.
Jesus. If you read the works of like Josephus, there are multiple people at this time who he refers to as Jesus who were actually these prophet-like figures. There is literally a dude who prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple for years, despite being interrogated by the Roman governor and flogged by the Jewish authorities. During the Roman siege of Jerusalem, he was wandering around on the walls preaching like a nut when he got converted into a pancake by a Roman catapult stone. He never wound up becoming the Jesus that billions of people follow today. But the idea that Jesus was just completely invented out of whole cloth, I find that unbelievable, usually for stories like this to form, and especially with so many like multiple attestations. Yes, they were later. Yes, they were written down after the fact. Yes, they probably changed as word of mouth was causing these stories to go through kind of a telephone-like phase. There was no internet. There was no telegraph. There weren't newspapers, but there was writing. It did get written down eventually, and there were a lot of different perspectives on him. I think he probably was a dude, because having a dude exist is a very low bar. Billions of dudes have existed in history. So I'm going to put pure myth down in D tier, but I do.
So he puts it in D tier. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's pretty. I'd probably put it there, honestly. I think, I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I would agree. It's D tier. It's funny that he brought up Jesus ben Ananias, because I view that pericope in Josephus as one of the reasons why the typical arguments for late dating of the Gospels don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
The basic idea is like the critical scholars are going to try to argue that Jesus could not have predicted the destruction of the temple. It makes much more sense to post-date it. And I think when you pair up a few other details with the idea that somebody like Jesus ben Ananias predicted the destruction of the temple, I forget what emperor he's under, but it's early 60s, I think he's doing this. You can say something along the lines of, when you have a bunch of these other details in the background, and you have this case example where somebody prior to the destruction of the temple actually predicted the destruction, it seems equally as intelligible on both hypotheses, post-70 and pre-70 AD dating, that somebody would mention such a pericope. That's like the short version of why I see that.
Yeah.
Where would you place this, Dr. Licona? Do you think it's D? Do you think it's under with the twin? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's right there with twin. Yeah, it's right there with twin. It's kind of crazy. We just have really good evidence for the existence of Jesus, and like the guy said, the Koolaid guy said, it's a low bar. I mean, it's like saying that the people who deny that the Holocaust existed. It's a low bar to if someone says, well, I do believe the Holocaust exists, it really occurred. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean you're a totally reasonable person just because you acknowledge that. You should acknowledge that at minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll agree with him on that for sure. So again, there's disagreements I have with this video, but there's a lot of stuff I agree with in this. I'll tell you that.
I do think that there is merit to the idea that a lot of the stories, especially all of the miracles, but a lot of the stories about Jesus, whether or not he went down to Egypt, whether or not he was born in Bethlehem, I think a lot of these were written into the story, that there probably was a guy named Jesus from Nazareth who got a following and convinced some of them he had miraculous powers. But a lot of the stories that then ballooned out of proportion were almost definitely pulled out of whole cloth, and they're big fish stories. Maybe he touched someone and they said that their pain went away, and they're like, oh, this person they haven't been able to see in 50 years or since birth or whatever, and now they have 20/20 vision. I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely blown out of proportion. But it probably was like the faith healers today, where he touches them, lays hands on them, and they think that it's better. They think that there's some marginal improvement in something, and it's just placebo or other natural effects. You have people with cancer who certain cancers have spontaneous rates of remission, and yet they'll attribute it to the divine. So I think that there probably was a dude named Jesus, but a lot of the stories is people after the fact going, well, the Messiah wasn't supposed to come from Nazareth. He was supposed to come from Bethlehem. So somehow we've got to get him from Nazareth down to Bethlehem, and we've got to fulfill this prophecy and that prophecy. So they're writing all of these things into the text. And especially you look at like the Gospel of Matthew, he'll change things. He'll copy verbatim from the Gospel of Mark, which was written earlier. And then he'll add little things in, and he'll add these notes that say, in order that the prophecy might be fulfilled. It's like, yeah, right, buddy. Okay. But
so before we get to his ranking, I think at this point, the Kool-Aid man lost the plot here. This is not about the question is was the resurrection a legend that came later? And you can't make that case because, again, of the creed of 1 Corinthians 15, the early sermons in Acts, the pre-Pauline literature as well, the rest of that. This is all showing the resurrection belief was very, very early. It could not have been a late legend. And he's just talking about other things that are not actually about the resurrection. But I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
Man, I want to say this right away. Thomas, if you're listening, we should have a discussion on miracles because it seems like you have a very Humean idea of miracles. And that's a topic I specialize in. We should talk if you're watching. Cool. I think that would be
Thomas,
really
the Kool-Aid man, is more than welcome to come on the channel and have a discussion with us. The open invitation is out there. We've done it for other atheists as well. They've not actually come on, but the invitation is out there for him as well. But yeah, go ahead, Dr. Licona. What are your thoughts on legend hypothesis? Actually, let's see his ranking, and then we can respond to that.
Wait. I'm gonna guess.
That's how
B tier.
Okay, you're wrong.
Legends work. So I'm gonna put legend. I think it's most likely to put it in A tier, but it's I don't know. It's not particularly interesting. I'm gonna pop it in B tier.
Oh, you're right. He does change this later. I'll give you that. He does change this later.
Okay.
Right now it's in there. Yeah.
Because B.
So what are your thoughts on that ranking, Dr. Licona? Again, I don't think this works at all.
I think something you said a little earlier is like he is kind of commingling some stuff and confusing things because you're talking about resurrection. He's talking about a lot of stuff in the Gospels. Now, of course, you got if we bracket our worldview and we try to be honest in historical investigation, we have to acknowledge that it's possible that there is some augmentation to the things that Jesus did reported in the Gospels, but it's also possible there's no augmentation to them. But something to look at, if you're looking at purely historically, is that the miracles of Jesus are some of the best attested things about him, as Graham Twelftree and Craig Keener both are leading experts on this in terms of this aspect of the historical Jesus. And it's because you have early sources, you have multiple independent sources, you have embarrassing reports such as, Jesus tries to heal a guy and then he said, that's blind. He said, well, I can, he spits on him in his eyes, makes some mud, put it there. And then he said, well, I can see some, but men are looking like trees. And so he has to do it again, Yeah. But then you also have unsympathetic sources like Josephus, who says that Jesus was a worker of amazing deeds. Now, that doesn't mean that he thought that Jesus was an actual miracle worker, but to say he was doing amazing deeds, that's the same Greek word that he uses for when he describes the miracles of, I think it's Elisha or Elijah. And then you've got the Talmud that refers to Jesus as a sorcerer. So it's not just these little things that Jesus is doing, like a little sleight of the hand. There's more than a little thing that he's known for doing. And the universal consensus today of historians of Jesus is that Jesus was known. He did perform deeds that astonished crowds that were regarded as divine miracles and exorcisms. That's not to say, again, that they think that he actually, the nature of these things were divine miracles and actual exorcisms where they cast out demons. But it is to say that these were jaw-dropping things. So the question that I think Kool-Aid should ask himself is, if none of these stories in the Gospels, if they're invented whole cloth, as he says, then what happened to the real stories that caused mouths to drop open, that led people to think that he was a divine miracle worker and exorcist, and others to say he's a sorcerer? Where are these? Why wouldn't any of them be reported in the gospel? So that's kind of interesting.
There's a video we put out in January where we went through a lot of the evidence Dr. Licona talked about. We cited Graham 12 tree, a bunch of other sources. So check that out if you want some more data on that. Would you agree though that this is or where would you place legend? A, B, C, D?
Well, let me say something else here, because I think it's important. If you're focusing on the resurrection of Jesus, there's something that one of you said a few moments ago. Before the Gospels were ever written, you've got that oral tradition in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 through 8. And verse 11, where Paul says that it's not just him, but it's the Jerusalem apostles, the other apostles that are proclaiming the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus, and the appearances. And we've got 5 sources from the first century alone that say that these disciples were willing to be persecuted continuously, and even some of them dying as martyrs. Even Josephus reports the martyrdom of James, the brother of Jesus. So you've got martyrdoms of several of them. You've got persecution of all of them, which strongly suggests that they believed what they were proclaiming. And so virtually every scholar, historian of Jesus today, even skeptics, say, they won't say the disciples were lying. They'll say they had experiences they interpreted as appearances of the risen Jesus to them. And you could say the same thing about Paul, right? So that rules out legend. You could say that maybe some of the resurrection narratives were amplified, but in terms of them believing that, having experiences that led them to believe Jesus rose from the dead and appeared to them, that's not a legend.
So would you want to put this on D, C? Where do you think?
Yeah, I'd put it above the hallucinations. It's still weak.
Okay.
So maybe a C.
C. All right. Yeah, we'll do. That's where I had it. That's what I was thinking. So I thought that was good. All right. So
but if you're going on a grading system, like
no. This is not a grading system. It's ranking. So you can place several on the same ranking system.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait, let's get back to the video since you got limited time here.
B tier is looking awfully lonely. And then there's swoon theory, which posits the idea that Jesus was crucified, but he didn't actually die. He maybe came within an inch of
swoon theory's coming, Than. Get ready.
His life, and when he was taken off the cross, he was tossed in a ditch or buried or something, and yet he recovered. He came back to life, and he either crawled out of the ditch or crawled out of the grave, or someone saved him and rescued him, nursed him back to health, and then he presented himself as resurrected. This one I don't find all that compelling because the Romans were particularly good at executions, but there have been plenty of people in history who were buried, who were thought to be dead, who wound up still being alive. And it's why they would attach bells to graves in the Middle Ages sometimes, because there were cases where people would wake up in a coffin clawing in the inside, and sometimes they were even interred afterwards and they found scratch marks on the inside of a coffin, and the person basically came back not to life but reanimated, and when they woke up they found themselves buried alive and couldn't get out and suffocated to death. So this one's not impossible, but I'm probably going to put it at the bottom in D tier.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Totally agree.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, dude, I was having heart palpitations because I was like, I swear if he puts this anywhere else other than D tier. Okay.
No, I agree. It's basically like I had debated in Ahmadi on this, and they're a heretical Muslim group to Sunnis, but they believe Jesus survived and went to India. And I pointed out in that debate, it's basically positing a miracle. The idea he could have survived, it would have taken a miracle to survive the crucifixion, and we have no evidence for it at all.
Not to mention, walking around 3 days later after this, like eating and talking with people and all this other stuff. Like, are we going to ignore that part?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it'd take a miracle in and of itself to survive that and then come back that quickly where you're walking around. It's got to be in D tier. I mean, and again, there's like maybe one or two scholars that defend this theory. It's not a big theory at all. No. So yeah, I think that's where we're at on there. Let's get back to the video because that one's pretty obvious. I think we all agree on that one. But let's get to the next one. This is an interesting one, Dr. Licona. I'd literally like your thoughts on this one specifically.
And then we have impersonators. This one is not talked about nearly enough. I think it
That's
is
because it sucks, but let's continue.
one of the coolest explanations because
I swear, if he talks about
it's
Elvis,
the core aspect of human psychology and the way that we think and the way that we think we can't be fooled, but we fall for things all the time. And it's the idea that Jesus had impersonators. Just for a modern day parallel to this, I recently did a video on Francis Schlatter, who said that he was a second coming of Jesus. He was a modern day Messiah. He was a faith healer. He performed all these signs and wonders, and then he disappeared into the desert and died. We have his bronze rod that he would wave around to do his miracles. They found his horse and his saddle, his engraved Bible, and his skeleton. This dude was dead. And yet, afterwards, all of these imposters realized the opportunity here with a miracle man with thousands of followers, and they realized that there was an opportunity to lead a movement, to make money, to bilk the followers, to sell holy blessed handkerchiefs. And so all over the place in the late 1800s, early 1900s, people popped up claiming that they were Francis Schlatter, and some said that they were resurrected, some said that he didn't actually die, but that they were him. But they saw an opportunity to impersonate someone. Now, you take that back 2,000 years, and here you have no newspapers, no photographs, no telegraph. There's no way of verifying it. Half of the people there never would have seen him or never would have seen him up close. And it would be very easy to fool quite a few people in this type of a situation. So the documentation from this time period, we have pretty much nothing within 100 years of Jesus' death. I find it quite plausible that when a messianic figure with a large following dies, that you would have people popping up afterwards saying, hey, I'm him resurrected. Even with Francis Schlatter, people who knew him, when they saw the imposters, there were people who knew Francis Schlatter personally who believed that the imposters were legitimate, that they were actually him, or that he had somehow changed slightly after he died, and that he had a different glow about him. So I don't find this one unbelievable at all. In fact, I think it's one of the coolest ones, possibly one of the most believable. I'm going to put it in S tier.
I was going to hit pause before that to get Than's reaction. So, but yeah, it's S tier, Than. You've heard it here, folks. S tier for the impersonator hypothesis.
look, I mean, if you have a very low view of, the reliability of the Gospels, and maybe you get rid of the idea that like Jesus showed the holes in his hands to people, and you think all of these post-Easter appearances are all legendary development,
Yeah.
maybe, sure. But on the off chance Thomas wants to grant that, does he think like some dude just like took a spike and was like, I'm going to pretend I'm
Well,
like
there's a big problem he overlooks. But so let me say this real quick, and then I'll toss it to Dr. Licona. Big problem he overlooks is there's a big difference between this Francis guy. Is this was in an environment where they were not trying to kill all these in person. There were not the U.S. government was not like, I got to kill all these impersonators. They had just killed Jesus. And these people are going to show up and say, I'm the guy you just murdered. Like, no, that's very unlikely. I highly doubt these people are going to run around. And we don't have evidence like of the other messianic prophets, like Judas the Galilean or the Egyptian prophet. People coming there going, yeah, that's me, the guy you killed. I'm back. Like, no, that doesn't. It's very unlikely. But what are your thoughts on this one, Dr. Licona?
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before. I'd say
it doesn't show up in scholarship that much.
No. I'd say it could possibly account for the appearance to the more than 500 at one time, right? We don't know who those people were, and so we don't know if they'd seen Jesus or exactly where this appearance occurred. So maybe it could account for the appearance to the more than 500. But other than that, it suffers from the same problems as the identical twin hypothesis, right? Mm-hmm. So you have Jesus' disciples. They walked with him for 1.5 to 3 years. They would have recognized the difference. And if you've got some people like the resurrection narratives talk about the doubting disciples, it's not just Thomas, but it's virtually all of them until the risen Jesus appeared to them. And it's like, well, wouldn't they be thinking an imposter? Would they be willing to suffer continuously and willing to die because they were so certain this was of Jesus? And I think even more problematic is Paul. Paul would have been very disinclined to believe that was Jesus. He would have thought it was an imposter, right? If there was an empty tomb, the first thing you would have thought is that the body had been reburied or stolen. So he wouldn't have fallen for this. And then I have to say something about James, the brother of Jesus. You know, Jesus's brothers, according to Mark, the Gospel of Mark, they thought Jesus was beside himself. According to the Gospel of John, chapter 7, none of his brothers believed in him. And even at the time of Jesus' death, Jesus entrusts the care of his mother to who? The beloved disciple, not one of Jesus's brothers, because apparently they still weren't believing at that point. But then afterwards, shortly after, before Pentecost, we find all of Jesus' brothers worshiping God with Jesus' disciples. And later on, you got James as leader of the Jerusalem church and is even martyred. So I don't think the imposter hypothesis accounts for this as well. There's no accounts where a skeptic even posited that there was an imposter. The skeptical accounts that have survived talk about the disciples stole the body, or the gardener reburied the body. Even the skeptics didn't posit any imposters. So
That's true. That's a good point.
I don't think.
You think this is you think this is D tier with the twin theory?
No, I'd probably put it up there with legend, but it's still not good.
I wish we knew the facts he was working with, like in a more detailed way.
Well, here's the thing. That's a good point you bring up, and I was just going to say, it's like there are so many facts about this whole thing that are just not being accounted for. Yeah, and then that's what we're kind of discussing here. It's like when they throw out these theories, they sound prima facie okay. Yeah, maybe it'll work. Then you start thinking about, okay, well, if you calculate in all these other things, like the fact that no impersonator would want to impersonate someone who was a criminal and would be executed by crucifixion. The fact that all the things that Dr. Licona just brought up, and then if you even take into account the wealth of data that shows the reliability of the Gospels, that Jesus was known as a miracle worker in his time, you look at these other theories, and that's why we're ranking them so low. They don't account for anything at all, and that's the problem here. That's what we keep running into. Maybe Thomas has got some really cool ways to explain these things. I don't know, but based on what we're seeing and what Dr. Licona has spent basically his career doing, none of these things really account. And the funny thing is, he's putting again the hypotheses that scholars just outright reject. Twin theory, impersonator theories at the top. Scholars don't take these ones seriously. It's just kind of funny that he's like putting the ones that critical scholars kind of go to try to avoid the resurrection low, and he's putting ones that they just outright reject up much higher. I found that kind of interesting here. Do a quick super chat here. Have you guys seen the debate between Dr. Ehrman and Jonathan Sheffield on Dr. Stephen Boyce's channel? I think it'd be good to review sometime. God bless. Glad to see you on the channel, Dr. Licona. I have not checked it out. I will try to check it out. I'm kind of annoyed that Jonathan got to debate Dr. Ehrman before I got to. So maybe I'm a little salty about that, but I'll try to check it out soon here. That's my problem. Began reading Lost World Genesis 1. Wonder if y'all believe the divine council was just a model used by ancient Hebrews to understand the cosmos, or more of a literal council. I think I take Heiser's view on that. I do think there is this sense of a council, but it's not like it's a council that God needs, as Heiser points out. It's just God likes fellowship, so he's fellowship with earthly beings, us, and fellowship with spiritual beings. And that's just what the divine council is about.
Yeah, I think Heiser's view is correct, and I think that you can actually see that theology in a lot of Paul's writings as well when he talks about eschatology.
Yeah, for sure. The twin hypothesis falls from the cultural historical perspective, as someone like N.T. Wright would gladly point out. Well said. Question for Mike. Why didn't Jesus' sisters get named in 1 Corinthians 15? Suggests Jesus didn't appear to them after the resurrection. Seems very sus. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a number of things. It's not, you don't have the appearance to the Emmaus disciples. You don't have the appearance to the women at the empty tomb. I think the answer, I think most scholars are correct on it, that the reason it's not mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Corinthians 15 is referred to, Paul uses the term kerugma or kerygma, meaning the official and formal public proclamation. And as scholars have noted, the testimony of a woman back then in Jewish culture as well as Greco-Roman culture the view of women was very low, quite a bit like you have in Muslim culture today, right?
Mhm.
And so you have Josephus say that the testimony of a woman is about on the same level as a thief and a robber. And so if you're going to invent a story, why would you make women your primary witnesses to say the empty tomb and being the first witnesses of the risen Jesus? So I think that gives credibility to the Gospels because they're willing to report, let's call it the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The ugly in terms of being embarrassing to the early believers because they knew as soon as they put women as the primary witnesses, they're going to get criticized for it, just as Celsus does later on. Who were the first witnesses of risen Jesus? Half frantic women, he says. So you got that, but the reason they're leaving. So I think when it comes to the kerygma, the public proclamation, they omit the women from it because they know they're not going to get any kind of mileage out of it.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think they just were like, let's just name some witnesses, but we're gonna kind of embarrassed that we have women. But when they tell the biographies, they have to include them because they were so central. And I think that's just a good point there. But let's get back to this video because we got 4 more to get through, and I want to try to get through it before you need to take off.
And then there is the liar hypothesis. C.S. Lewis put forth this idea that Jesus could only be a liar, a lunatic, or Lord. And I think that that's incredibly limiting. I think that there's a million different hypotheses, but there is the possibility that none of this happened, that Jesus wasn't crucified, that he wasn't beaten, that all of these stories were literally pulled out of thin air. You have examples of this happening in modern day, where you will have these apostolic pastor, prophet, leader, teachers like Todd Bentley, who will come along and say that he's raised all of these people from the dead.
25 years of ministry in 73 countries. I've seen 37 people raised from the dead.
Or W.V. Grant that'll say that they've done all these miracles.
We've seen 6 people raised from the dead.
The dead man began to move.
We've seen midgets grow.
Some of them will even say that they themselves rose from the dead.
One time I was preaching in Africa.
I do like that line. We've seen midgets grow. It's just the weirdest thing.
That got me. That got me.
That never brag about ever, man.
And I died.
Oh, man.
Came out of my body. I died. Died. And guess what? Got raised from the dead.
And people eat it up. They buy it cold turkey. So the idea that 2,000 years ago that people were somehow less gullible than they are today, I find highly unlikely. Highly unbelievable. I could easily go back, assuming time machines existed. I could go back to the year 0 and bilk a bunch of people out of, well, they didn't have a lot of money back then, so I guess I'd be bilking them out of fish. But I could go back.
It's kind of an odd admission there. I want to come back to that in a minute.
To this time period, say that I resurrected and say that some wonderful, incredible things happened. And sure, there would be doubters and you'd have skeptics just like any time, but you would also have a lot of people that would be like, wow, that's amazing. God spoke to you. And if you add things like the power of suggestion, faith healing miracles, through the placebo effect and, the pain numbing effects of adrenaline or all this other stuff that I've touched on my faith healing series of how people fool people, then it's very easy to see how people who already believe in a lot of these religious ideas would fall prey to someone who is acting as a mouthpiece of God. So,
where do you think he's going to place this one, Than?
C.
Let's check it out.
I'm going to pop this one in A tier.
A tier. A tier. It's an A tier theory, guys. So
I really need something to hit.
We'll get you a punching bag. I mean, the biggest problem is kind of one of the things he admitted is like these modern day faith healers are doing it and they're getting a lot of money and attention. They're not operating in a hostile environment, a hostile and poor environment. Whereas the apostles were operating in a hostile and poor environment. What are you doing? You're going around proclaiming to people that are not going to be able to give you a lot of money. We don't see any evidence of that. Paul is moving around from church to church, dealing with the Corinthians. He used to keep writing letters back to fix. I mean, these are not like the loyal followers you can use and abuse if you're the one who keeps getting used and abused, it seems. And again, they're being persecuted. Paul's talking about that. What are they doing? Like there's no comparison with modern faith healers, different environment, different circumstances. What are your thoughts on this one, Dr. Licona?
You know, I don't know those faith healers that he cited on there. I don't travel in those circles. Certainly, I'm sure some of them are charlatans. I can't name any of them. But you know, our friend Craig Keener has written on this extensively, documenting miracles from antiquity up to the present day, and of some people who have been raised from the dead after being prayed over. His Craig's sister-in-law is one such person. So his wife's sister died over in the Congo from a poisonous snake bite when she was a child, and there was no hospital around. Her mother took her 6 hours or something like 6 hours, might have been longer, to see a pastor in a tribe that was not nearby. And the sister hadn't been breathing all this time. The pastor prayed over, and boom, she came back to life. So that's someone that Craig even knows, and knows the person who saw this happen. So you have that. Lee Strobel has talked about it in his book, The Case for Miracles. So to say that this has never happened, it's unprecedented, it's just naive. It's weighing in with your skepticism and just showing that you're unfamiliar with the reports. Moreover, it's established that the disciples and Paul sincerely believed that Jesus rose from the dead and had appeared to them. They weren't lying, right? So Paul would have thought that they were lying or hallucinating, but no, he came to believe based on his own experience of the risen Jesus, and the fact that the disciples were willing to suffer and willing to die for their conviction that Jesus had been raised is evidence of the sincerity of their beliefs that Jesus had been raised. And finally, I just say, I'm not aware of any scholar today, no matter how skeptical, that thinks that that the Jesus disciples and Paul and James and the rest of them lied about the resurrection of Jesus. So I mean, it's amazing that he would put it on an A tier.
Yeah, I was going to say,
real
especially
quick
for Paul, because my understanding of the critical scholarship is that Paul's honest at the very least in most of his writing.
Yeah.
You're gonna, if this is what you're positing, you're gonna break up a lot of the
yeah.
critical scholarship on Paul.
Paul's a huge thorn in the side for the whole competing hypotheses of the resurrection. So where would we put this one? What are your thoughts? Where should this one go? D, C, B? Definitely not A.
Look, I mean, it fails so horribly, but
I'm fine with D.
Jesus never existed. I mean, it surely is better than that one, but
all right.
I mean, can you do like a D plus?
We'll do a D plus. Okay, we'll do like between the D and the C. It goes right. That makes sense to me. That makes sense. I like that. So we'll do kind of in the middle in there. So all right, I think that makes sense to me. We'll do that. Yeah. Brings me joy to see such righteous, intelligent men. May God bless you and your families. All the effort for your videos don't go unnoticed. Thank you so much. A bright place in a world full of ignorance. Love you guys. Yeah, guys, be sure to watch the videos we put out, like them, share them on your own social media. That helps. That just tells sometimes, even if no one likes it, when you share it on your own social media, that tells the algorithm, hey, people are sharing this. I should show it to other people. So when you share our videos, when you comment under them, you actually do help the videos get out more, even if you don't see it happening on your timeline. So keep that in mind. Post all our videos on it, and more people will see them. And you are a huge play in getting those videos out and helping us lead more people to Christ, for sure. After a hazing, Jesus woke up in somebody's tomb. Yep, that's what the swoon theory hypothesis proponents want to tell us. Yeah. Thank you for the very generous super chat. He says, put this to Than's punching bag. He looks like he needs it. Yep. Certainly does. We will definitely for that.
I have some rafters that I could hang one up too, and it'd be funny, man. You just show me a video that I don't like, and I just get up and
all right,
hit the bag with the right hook.
So let's move on. This is where you're gonna talk about the actual resurrection, and I love the way he dismisses it. I love his reasoning. Nothing to do with the evidence. You'll see.
And then there is the idea that Jesus was actually resurrected, that he physically rose from the dead. I have been around this planet, all over the planet. I've seen a lot of crazy things, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that people do not come back from the dead. I'm not
Okay, David Hume, thank you.
talking about near-death experiences where they go into a coma-like state or their heart stops.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead.
I'm talking brain dead, dead. You're out, you're gone, 3 days, completely dead, come back to life. Doesn't happen. It violates all of the laws of physics. There is no precedent for this happening whatsoever. The idea that somehow it's more plausible because it happened way back.
You got to believe, Dave, you got to believe in resurrections because we are seeing the resurrection of David Hume right before our eyes. I don't see the problem now.
When stuff wasn't well documented, when we didn't have doctors and lab tests and stuff, like if God wanted to come down and convince people of something that is of that level of monumental importance that people actually believe it because all of their eternal souls is on the line, to do it in this remote part of the world and not have a shred of evidence for it. Jesus didn't write anything firsthand. We have no piece of anything that he built himself. We don't even have secondhand accounts of things that people wrote.
Are you telling me if we found a table that Jesus built, that would convince you? What does it have to do with that? Man, that's weird thing to bring up.
This is one of the reasons I harp on modern day miracles so much, by the way, because if we have a bunch of modern day miracles that are really plausible, the prior probability of the resurrection of Jesus is not that low anymore. Right?
Exactly.
Wrote about him. We have stuff maybe fourth.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's not just modern miracles, things like even near-death experiences that are well evidenced where a person does have an out-of-body experience when they're clinically dead and they learn information that turns out to be accurate that they could not have otherwise known. That strongly suggests a spiritual dimension of reality and gets you another step closer to resurrection. You know, paranormal phenomena like demonic kind of activity. All of this shows that there is a spiritual dimension of reality, which does not fit in with the skeptics or the atheist worldview, but it's sure sets up a context in which resurrection is comfortable.
Yep, good point.
Yeah,
good point.
I have a quick rebuttal to the whole dead people stay dead argument too, but I don't know how much time you have left, Dr. Licona.
We got about 40 minutes with him left. So let's finish this one up and then we can do that. Yeah.
Fifth, sixth hand pseudepigraphal accounts written decades after the fact, and those don't survive. We don't have those. We don't even have anything for pretty much a century until after he died. And it's like, this is the milieu in which the most important story is supposed to be passed on. And this is the idea of an all-knowing, all-powerful deity that then miraculously raised the Son of God to life. Like, I don't waste my time. It's bullshit. I'm going to pop this one. If there was an F tier, I'd put it way down in F tier because it's way less believable than D. In fact, I'm going to pop Legend up to A. I'm going to move this one up to B. I'll move these into C just so that Actually Resurrected gets its own little absolute BS all the way.
So that's where he's putting the resurrection hypothesis. He's going to put it in D tier below all of the others. And his reasoning has nothing to do with actually going over the evidence. It's, I'm a naturalist. I'm going to assume naturalism is true. I'm going to assume miracles can happen. So therefore, there can't be a resurrection. This is always the reason why people reject the resurrection. And then they accuse us of being illogical when they're clearly employing circular reasoning. Well, dead people just stay dead. What about all this evidence? No, I don't talk about evidence. I'm just going to assume the worldview. I'm going to presuppose naturalism. So there's, and then they're like, well, why can't you just convince me of the resurrection? Well, gee, maybe because you have this unmovable presupposition. What do you expect? Who's being more reasonable here? We're trying to tell people constantly, hey, don't start with Christianity being true. Don't start with naturalism being true. Start with agnosticism and then just follow the evidence where it leads. If it leads to a resurrection, go to there. If it doesn't, go with something that's natural. That's what we want. And yet we're the ones that are not being reasonable. This is one of my biggest gripes with these people. Their objections to the resurrection, as we just saw, are not based on evidence. It's based on philosophical presuppositions that they will not give up. And that just shows you they're the ones being unreasonable.
I don't understand why. One of the things that I've offered to skeptics to constantly at this point for the resurrection is just conditionalize what you think is more likely on two different accounts of reality, right? Use your atheistic account and then use a general theistic one, and then let's see what you think, and then that'll tell us what needs to be done, if that makes sense. Like,
I get it. What are your thoughts, Dr. Licona?
Yeah, it makes a number of flawed thinking in this, but you can see as he's talking about this that he's emotional about it, right?
Yeah,
he is emotional about it, and like you said, he's not making good logical arguments. He says it violates all the laws of physics. Well, no, it doesn't. The laws of physics inform us what typically occurs in our universe when it's left to itself. But if God raised Jesus, well, then the universe was not left to itself, right? And the God who created the laws of physics can do whatever he wants with them whenever he wants to. So if he is entering into our universe and the universe is not a closed universe, it's an open one, well, then he's not violating the laws of nature. It's not an exception to the laws of nature. It's just simply when the hand of God comes in and alters the normal course of events. The universe wasn't left to itself. He talks about how all of our accounts are fourth to sixth hand and they're pseudepigraphal. well, that's false. Nobody. I don't even think skeptical New Testament scholars, atheist New Testament scholars would hold that. So, I mean, that's just crazy. Plus, Paul was an eyewitness. His letters are firsthand, right? Matthew and John, I believe that they're firsthand. As I argued in my debate with Bart Ehrman that you were at, Michael. But even if you reject that, you still wouldn't put them fourth to sixth hand. So I think that's problematic. He talks about our first manuscript isn't until about a century after Jesus died. Well, that's correct, but it is a fragment of the Gospel of John, and it's written within probably 10 to 60 years of when the Gospel of John was written. And we have between 6 and 15 manuscripts of the New Testament that's written within 150 years of when the autographs were there. When you compare that with the Latin and Greek classics, it's ridiculous. Plutarch's Lives would come kind of close to the Gospels in the New Testament. Plutarch's considered to be the greatest ancient biographer. Well, we have 5 fragments that are written within 180 years of Plutarch writing. Not quite as good as what you have with the New Testament literature. And for the Latin classics, our first manuscripts are good manuscripts are usually dated the 9th to 16th centuries, or about 700 years or more after the writings. So this guy just hasn't done his research. He says, don't waste his time. It's BS. Again, this is just emotion. He doesn't want to believe these things. He doesn't like Christianity for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know a story. I'd never heard of this guy before you asked me to. I mean, he's a popular guy. He's got over 250,000 subscribers. So I'm not putting him down for this. It's just, I just don't deal with the internet skeptics. Not familiar with most of them. And, but you could tell he's just emotional. Something has led him to this, and it's not been his logic.
So any disagreements with me putting this S tier? Because if you disagree, you're wrong. So just going to put that up there. I think that's basic, because this is the only one that explains all the data. Sorry, It just simply is. And it's plausible, because as Stan was pointing out, it can also count. This is plausibility can be drawing from modern miracles, near-death experiences, arguments for God's existence, can all help with the plausibility aspect. If you guys want more on the criteria that I'm talking about, check this book out.
I would
I like to use.
I would put it on the A tier.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I would, and because now I don't understand this rating system exactly. Well, when I think S tier, it's like that would be like saying it could not be stronger, and certainly we'd have to acknowledge that something like Jesus's death by crucifixion is stronger. That would be S tier. In
I see what you're getting at there. I see what you're getting at. The way I'm thinking of it is like, what is going to be the best explanation, and that's going to go.
If you're going to do that, then Resurrection definitely wins. He puts it at the very bottom, but he's living in an upside down world. I mean, look at where he puts up an S tier and the A tier. Stuff that scholars would put down at the very bottom.
Exactly. Well said. So we got two more. Let's get through these so that because then we can
two more.
move on.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
All the way down at the bottom. Any one of these explanations I find infinitely more plausible than the fact that he is raised from the dead, because we're talking about impossibilities versus things that actually do happen all the time, that we have precedent for, that we see happening all around us, that people fall for cult.
I'm going to bring this point up later. I think it's important what he's saying here. I think it kind of works against him. We'll come back when we talk about the combo theory.
It's doing all kinds of stuff like this. One quick bonus one that I almost forgot about is propaganda. And it's the idea that the entire story of Jesus being this Messiah-like figure, his death, his resurrection, that all of it was a form of propaganda. You have two different trains of thought. One is that it's the Jewish propaganda, and that they're trying to make sense of a world, especially after the fall of the temple, that they're putting forth this idea that maybe their Messiah was actually not this literal king with a physical kingdom of this world, but maybe that it was something spiritual, and it's a way of coping, like a coping mechanism. The other is that it's a form of Roman propaganda, and that the Romans were tired of continuously over and over and over fighting these messianic-like figures that would pop up by this oppressed people group, that they were tired of having to put down rebellions. And so they created this figure who is actually peaceful and is all about loving your enemies and turning the other cheek and forgiving everyone, including your enemies. And
thesis.
It's the Atwell theory, yeah. I think he puts this low.
Kingdom is not of this earth, and that you should give to Caesar what is Caesar's and pay your taxes. A peaceful Messiah that is an alternative to these freedom fighters who were trying to overthrow the empire. I think that there were probably people on both sides who were kind of coping with the destruction of the temple, and that affected the stories surrounding Jesus, both by his followers, people who knew him, as well as people who maybe weren't Christian yet, and they were looking for something to latch onto. I think it's not unlikely or unrealistic that the Roman Empire would try to influence these ideas as well. But I don't really find the idea that maybe Jesus never existed and he was purely propaganda. I don't find that all that believable. Maybe he was a legend and propaganda latched onto it. I'm going to put this one.
All right. Where do you think he's going to put this, Stan?
C?
In B tier.
B tier. Yep. The basically, I mean, to be fair, he's not saying the full Atwell theory.
Yeah.
He's saying maybe there's like a variation of it, but I mean, still, it's like the Romans invented Jesus, that Romans propagandized this. That's wild, man. There's no reason for that. I mean, I don't. Where would we put this one, Dr. Licona, in your view? Propaganda.
I think it's got to go down. It's either got to be a D, or I'd put it as a D. I think it's crazy. Paul, for Jewish propaganda, because they now have to figure out, where life goes after the destruction of the temple. Well, Paul is writing quite a bit before the destruction of the temple, maybe as much as 20 years before the destruction of the temple. He's going, after Christianity, not in his, before that, he was going after Christianity with the resurrection of Jesus. They were proclaiming that Jesus had been raised from the dead prior to his own conversion. And then he's believing it, and the Christians are believing, the disciples are believing it, thousands are believing it before the destruction of the temple. In terms of Roman propaganda, they turn around, and the Romans want to present a really nice, loving, peace-loving Jesus. Paul, Paul and the apostles already believed the resurrection of Jesus. We see through the Christian literature, from the New Testament to the Christian literature shortly thereafter, all the way up until Eusebius is writing in the 4th century. We find in non-Christian sources such as Josephus and Tacitus especially, that the Romans were out persecuting Christians. They were killing the Christians. Pliny the Younger, in his letters to the emperors, he's saying, look, I'm going door to door and to people who are accused of being Christians. And I'm saying, are you a Christian? And if they say yes, I tell them the penalty for them to confess Christ and give them the opportunity to curse Christ and praise the Roman gods. And if they refuse to do that, I give them a warning again and saying, you're going to be executed. We're going to kill you. We're going to martyr you in a brutal way. This is going to be your penalty. And if they still refuse, I give them one more chance. And if they don't renounce Christ at that point and show their allegiance to the Roman gods, then I take them off and I have them executed. Is this okay to do that? So you've got this in the beginning of the 2nd century. So the Romans are still persecuting the Christians then. We got Tacitus reports that in the middle of the 1st century, during the reign of Nero, that Nero was killing Christians in Rome. So this is just crazy to say it's Roman propaganda that they are embracing Christ. We see that they were doing the exact opposite.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's well said. We got one more to look at. I'll do some super chats here quickly. Thoughts on 1 Corinthians 11:14 in memory. Does not nature itself teach that if a man wears long hair, is it a disgrace for him? So what do you have any thoughts on that verse at all, Dr. Licona?
No, I haven't really looked at that. So no, I don't have any thoughts on it.
It's one of the most confusing and debating passages of Paul. We're not entirely sure what's sort of going on in this. Some think that he might be quoting the Corinthians partially in this and then responding like he does elsewhere in the letter. We're just not entirely sure what's going on there. So there's that at play. I tend to think that he's just saying like, this is the cultural understanding that, men should not have hair longer than women, that there are certain ways men and women dress, and we should exemplify that to fill our certain roles. But that's a whole can of worms to open for this stream for sure.
Yeah, I have my view on that too, but
you should do this, but with the story of the Al Zut. Yes, the different theories of what's going on with the story of the Al Zut sounds like a great idea. I have to say that Than and Mike Licona have a better setup than IP. He really needs to up his game. Well, I don't care that much. So how about that?
If you ever end up moving, Mike, I will build your studio for you.
A tiny house, man. If you guys want me to have a bigger house with a bit nicer background, you got to donate more so I can afford a nicer house.
I don't have a big house. This is you've seen my office.
I've seen it. You have a bigger house than me. A bigger house than
I live in the boonies in the Midwest, so
I got a small house. That's why it sucks. But yeah, this is what I am working with. Sorry, I'm not rich like these two fellas here. Thoughts on Eucharistic miracles? I have not looked into them, so I cannot comment on them. That's what I would say.
I am pretty convinced of some of them. There's one, for instance, that you can find white blood cells that are maintained over years in some of these artifacts. It's pretty insane.
Dr. Licona is thoroughly convinced of them, this is why he is born again Catholic now, I assume.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that, so I don't have any thoughts on it.
Thank you, Pastor Tony. I feel like Tony should always be said with this.
Tony.
For becoming a YouTube member. Thank you so much. Swoon theory is F tier, says Pendragon. You can't compare people being thought to be dead to Roman crucifixion. I agree. Yeah, it's definitely low. We had it on the D tier, so it's the lowest possible rank we could give it. The Bible presents people not recognizing Jesus. Yeah, but it's then they do recognize him. So, and they're like the disciples on the road to Emmaus. It's not Peter. It's not John. It's not those that were closest to him. It's just other disciples that we don't know how much they may have seen or known.
Yeah, let me say something about that too. So you have three accounts that talk about that. One is Mary in the Gospel of John, right? Mary Magdalene. She thought it was the gardener. And
before she looked, yeah.
Michael, have you been to You've been to Jerusalem?
I have not. No, I'm
Okay.
poor.
Dan, have you been to Jerusalem?
He's also
No,
poor.
I'm
Okay.
also poor.
So I've been to the Holy Sepulchre, tomb of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre twice, and there's other tombs around there. When you go inside a tomb and you turn around, the way it is you see outside, you only see the person up to their hip. At most, you only see it up to their hip. So if Mary's inside the tomb, she turns around because Jesus is outside saying, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who do you seek?" She wouldn't have seen him at that point. So I mean, that it's easy to think about. It's the morning. Maybe there's not a whole lot of sunlight. Maybe there's even tears in her eyes at that point. I don't know. But even if her eyes were clear, she'd look out. She'd only see him up to his waist. So that's one thing. Another one is the Emmaus disciples, where Luke says their eyes were kept from recognizing him. So that's kind of interesting. And then the third one is Matthew 28:17, where it says, when he appeared to them in Galilee, some worshiped him, but others doubted. And the Greek term that is used there for doubt is distazo. It means to think two things. It's used one other time in Matthew, and that's where Peter is walking on water. And then the wind is kicking up the waves, and he starts to worry and sink, and then save me, Jesus. And Jesus pulls him up and says, "Why did you doubt?" Distazo. You were thinking two things. You had enough faith to get out on the water and walk, but then you thought, wow, this is, but what if I drown here? If I go down. So he's thinking two things. Now, so these disciples could have been thinking, well, there he is. This is amazing. Wow. But how? It's like there are two things they're thinking at the same time. One other thing. When you go to Luke's gospel, which I think that Luke, John, and Matthew are giving the same appearance to the first appearance to the group of male disciples, although Luke and John place it in Jerusalem, whereas Matthew places it on Galilee. And why they do that, I don't know. One of them has displaced it to another location. But what's interesting is Luke's account. When Jesus appears to the group of male disciples for the first time, it says, out of fear, out of joy and amazement, they were apistos, non-believing. Now, listen, out of joy and amazement, marveling, they were non-believing. Well, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That only makes sense if you're taking non-belief there in terms like seventh game of the World Series, bottom of the ninth, walk-off home run. Unbelievable. Or more recently, the U.S. defeating Canada in the hockey, men's hockey, in overtime. Unbelievable. It's like that kind of thing. It's not like these guys are they got their arms crossed and scowl on their face and nodding their head, wagging their head. That's not him. No, I'm unbelieving. No, it's out of joy and marveling they were unbelieving. So it's just Luke uses a stronger term than Matthew does with the distazo, the doubt. So yeah. I don't think that doubt is probably the best English word, but it really doesn't communicate the sense that we have there in Matthew 28:17 when it says some worship but others doubted.
Yeah, that happens a lot with the Bible. Like in Genesis, when it says God regretted making man, that there's no English word that really captures that Hebrew word. Very similar in that kind of situation where he's not really regretting. It's just he's upset, but yet judgment has to be passed is kind of what it's trying to get at. And so kind of happens a lot when words move across languages. All right, we got one more here, and I think we can get it all done with your time that you have with us. So let's dive into here about the combo hypothesis here.
And then finally, we have the last explanation for today, the combo. This is the idea that it's not just one of these, that it's a combination of different things all happening at once around one figure. So let's say that you had a figure like Jesus who actually existed, who was larger than life, who lied like a master manipulator, created all kinds of crazy stories about him that people believed that he had a twin, and that after he died, that there were people who mistook his twin for him. At the same time, after he died, there were impersonators that saw an opportunity and latched onto it. I mean, you've got stories like the Road to Emmaus where there were people who didn't recognize him, and then all of us.
You used your foresight and already addressed that. So good job.
sudden they're like, oh my God, that was Jesus, after Hugh sat down and had dinner with them. That's the kind of thing that you would expect from an imposter. It's also quite possible that this story was warped.
Also weird that imposter just left the room by disappearing instantly.
That's
very,
right.
Very strange.
Yeah. That's what I thought
Listed
too.
as a form of propaganda.
That's the thing. If we're going to start taking the Gospels and what they say, why are we just cherry picking the parts that we like? And well, we got to get rid of the miracle parts, but we'll take the other part because it fits our impersonator hypothesis. Very picky.
It shows he really hasn't thought through the stuff seriously.
Yeah. What's the methodology we're employing here? You spend like 200 pages laying out your methodology. I'd like to hear what that is here for the Kool-Aid man.
That there were people who had grief hallucinations and thought that they heard his voice or saw him in visions afterwards. I think absolutely a lot of these stories ballooned out of control with each retelling, and that there was a kernel of truth and an actual figure that then became a legend. There were people who said, oh, he totally appeared to this person or that person. But we have accounts from that time of legends and stories blowing out of proportion that we know were not true. The idea that the explanations for the resurrection stories and narratives around Jesus was just one of these, I find highly unlikely. So in this situation, you're not just looking at one explanation. You're not just looking at, well, is it more likely that Jesus had impersonators or that he rose from the dead? Well, I think it's more likely. Well, obviously, it's more likely that he had impersonators than that he rose from the dead, but it's way more likely that it was a series of all of these things or a lot of these things playing in tandem in a very complicated situation after the death of this messianic figure. So I am going to...
Where do you think he's going to place it here, Than?
I'm not even clear on what the combo is, to be honest with you.
He just, that's the thing. He just talks about combo generally. He doesn't actually make a combo hypothesis.
Well,
I guess
he does. He does. He says Jesus was a master manipulator. And then he puts the twin hypothesis in there. And then there was impersonators, plus grief hallucinations, plus embellishments or legendary embellishments.
Yeah. Let's, where do you think
how does that all interact? That's what I'm...
Well, he doesn't explain it, but where do you think he's going to place it?
I'm assuming he's going to just like feel himself and put it in S tier or something.
You're absolutely correct.
I'm going to pop combo all the way up here in S tier.
Boom.
It is creme de la creme. And whenever people from the apologists, Christian apologists, religious creationist side try to put forth these creationist stories as this is 100% literal truth, gospel truth history, and that based off of a minimal facts argument like Gary Habermas puts forth, that somehow the actually resurrected explanation is the best of the best. Don't waste my time with that. There are so many better explanations. There are so many different ways that these stories could have come together. What do you guys think? How?
So there we have that, ladies and gentlemen. Puts the combo at the top. And so what were those again, Dr. Licona? So grief hallucinations, the twin theory, impersonators, legendary development is kind of what he's throwing out as
master manipulator.
And master manipulator. You know, this is why I always cite your book so much, because this is what you're kind of pointing out. What is the problem with that? It's being very ad hoc. You're basically positing something that is in itself a miracle. Notice what he said after he dismissed the resurrection hypothesis. Like, there are so many other things that could happen. And this has never happened, a resurrection throughout history. Well, guess what also has never happened? A crazy combination like that has produced the world's most popular religion. So you're basically positing a miracle in and of itself. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, ad hoc. Plus think about, what you're looking at here. The twin hypothesis is extremely implausible. The impersonators, same thing. Grief hallucinations, maybe for one or two, but for all of them, and the group hallucinations, whoa. So you are combining a number of very low probability, very rare, if not impossible, hypotheses together, combining them together. And so I could think of some better combination hypotheses that would be far better than what he talked about here. But if you're going to use his, then what he has done is he's combined a bunch of very flawed hypotheses, and that doesn't make one good one. It's kind of like if you have a car that's not running because the mechanic looks at it and says that there are 10 parts in it that are really broken. You don't go to the store and buy 10 broken parts to replace them and then think that the car is going to run. Again, you combine a bunch of highly flawed and problematic elements like he's done. It doesn't make one good hypothesis. But yet he puts it at S tier. Again, it's an upside down world that he's living in.
Yeah. Where do you think Than, anything you want to add before we go to this?
I mean, I just find the whole, let's just grant that no resurrections have happened within human history. Right? And you want to say something like, Mike, I even made a reel on this one time, right?
Yeah.
You want to say something like, throughout human history, only about, what is it? I think it was 500 billion humans have existed or something like that. So we can put the prior probability of the resurrection at 1/2 billion, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the objection to the resurrection. Well, it's so improbable. But the problem is, we also haven't observed abiogenesis yet Thomas most likely believes that, right? And the number of times we've seen life arise from life and life arise from non-life, that ratio is going to be exponentially higher than people that have lived and stayed dead. That's not going to be 1/2 billion, 200 billion, or whatever that number is. It's going to be in like the nonillion range. So the prior probability of life arising from non-life is going to be that low. Yet on the basis of the testimony of scientists, Thomas believes in abiogenesis, despite that low prior probability. Now, there's way more stuff that I would unpack there, but the basic idea is like, this is a really bad objection to the resurrection. And if you actually thought this way in many other areas, these would be counterintuitive arguments to your own beliefs. It's just insane to me.
It's a good rebuttal. It's a good response.
It's a good point. So let's where are we thinking the combo theory? Where do you guys want to put this one? I kind of want to go B tier because we can at least say it has more explanatory scope.
Yeah, but the prior probability is just so low because there's so many compounding, like ad hoc theories put together.
What do you guys think? What are your thoughts, Dr. Licona?
I think if we use the combination hypothesis that he gave, I might put it at a D plus, but you could probably come up with a better combination hypothesis and put it as tier B.
Yeah, that's why it's just combo generally. I mean, I would put it on B. I would put general combo on B. I put his combo on C, maybe D. But I'd say generally the combo is going to be a little bit better. But there are better combos we can come up with, so I would put it at B at least, because you can come up with a better combo and that would have more explanatory scope. But you're also going to sacrifice a lot in the area of being ad hoc, because now you have to posit all sorts of different things. And now you still got to get around Paul. Paul is a huge thorn in the side of people arguing against the resurrection, because that is a hard fact to account for. And it's one of the strongest ones we have. So I'd say his combo I'd put in C, but general combo B. I don't know if you guys disagree or not.
Yeah, I mean, as far as naturalistic hypotheses go, I think the combo, like I always say, I think the RHBS story is going to be like the strongest one. The reburial, hallucination, biases, and socialization model is probably going to be the strongest naturalistic attempt to explain everything. But Thomas did not use that.
Yeah, but he didn't use that, but that is a combo. We will include that one. I don't know. I like this. I like this ranking here. I think this is my favorite ranking I've ever done. I think this is pretty accurate if you want my honest opinion. But yeah, that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to some super chats here. Dr. Licona's got to take off any minute now. The problem with the impersonator idea is that some people would have said something if it was an impersonator, since some already met Jesus before. Oh, the problem with the impersonator idea is that some people would have said something if it was an impersonator, since some already met Jesus before his death. Yeah. Someone would have probably have argued that. And my guess is the Sanhedrin would have killed that guy or handed that guy over to the Romans. Thoughts on James P. Ware's book on 1 Corinthians 15? I've not read that one. I don't know if you have, Dr. Licona. Yeah.
I haven't either. I know Gary Habermas and Ben Shaw both think that it's pretty good.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at it. Yeah. Do you have a plan to make a video explaining the origins of Lent, particularly countering the idea that it's Christian Ramadan? Who says that? If not, any suggestions on other channels to check out? Lent date predates Islam. So, I mean, that's a really ridiculous argument. People are saying that. If I see somebody arguing that, I will definitely make a video on it and show that they're just...
Jesus was a Muslim, though. Don't you understand? It's
proof. Thank you guys for going over these kinds of video. I ordered Dr. Licona's book on the Resurrected of Jesus, and I look forward to reading it. Excellent. Great to hear. Also, his channel is in the title of this video. Go make sure you subscribe to that because he's on YouTube as well. Help get his channel growing some there for sure. God exists. How is him acting in creation going against nature? Well, that's good argument to propose against David Hume Jr. here. Satan is clearly using this guy and he doesn't even know it. Maybe he does. Nah, I doubt he knows it. I don't know about you, but seeing a guy walking around days after suffering a Roman crucifixion would be pretty compelling evidence of some sort of divinity. Nobody simply walks that off. Yeah.
Just throw a little dirt on it. Rub a little dirt in it.
Walk it off, Jesus. You'll be fine. Yeah. Quoting, I've been around the world and I've never seen anyone come back to life. Isn't that the point? That the only man Jesus could ever do it. Yeah, no one makes the argument. Well, resurrections happen all the time, so Jesus must have resurrected. No one is making that argument. No one. So this is a huge straw man when they use this.
Yeah, that this is conflating statistical probability with epistemic probability.
Well said. Paul was far better off materially as a Pharisee. Yes, he was. He had the support of the rich Jerusalem council, the elites there, and all of a sudden now he's being persecuted, run around, has to collect donations for the Jerusalem church. I mean, like, yeah, he did not trade up for sure. It didn't make any sense. Which of the series would you put in Zut tier? Oh, totally Myth, the twin theory, Swoon. Yeah, that's what I put in Zut tier.
Hey guys, you please continue, but I have to run. I've got another one coming up here. So
yeah,
great being with you. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this. It's been a fun exercise.
Absolutely. We'll have you back again soon. Appreciate you coming. And we will finish out Super Chats. So yeah, thanks for coming, Dr.
Bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm glad we were able to get through the whole video because I was worried. When he told me he had to take off at this time, I was like, oh crap, we got to get through this video. No.
I know. I really wanted to, when he was talking about onomastic congruence, I was excited and I wanted to tell him that my paper's in peer review, but I didn't want to waste time.
Yeah, what did you?
Which, by the way, we can talk publicly about that now.
Oh, okay. So you go ahead, announce it. What's going on with the paper you've been working on? One of two.
Yeah. So, one of two of them. So one of the papers, it's still in peer review. We've been waiting for over a year at this point. But I worked with Dr. Luke Vandewey and Dr. Jason Wilson. They wrote a paper 2 years ago on onomastic congruence. Mike, you made a video on this channel. But yeah, I worked with them and we basically made an onomastic congruence 2.0 paper, making the argument even stronger. But yeah, we're done waiting on the peer review process and we're probably going to write a script and all that jazz, showing you guys all the stuff we found. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Yeah, so that should be we're doing that pretty soon. Isn't there something else you wanted to bring up earlier? Forget what it was, but if you think of it.
I already told Dr. Licona the statistical argument thingy, the whole dead men stay dead thing.
Yeah, that's.
And he said that's a good argument, and I was like, yes, I know. I like math.
I mean, people not recognizing Jesus is a refute of fake Jesuses. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, all right, I get your point now. Here's a theory: if it's all a conspiracy made up by people desperate to be shamed, mocked, jailed, and killed, A tier. It's the Babylon B one. It's the
But we'll get
the-
something good out of it, right? No, you'll all be brutally murdered.
The ground was fertile for the birth of Christianity, though. Gentiles were interested in Judaism, and Christianity lowered these barriers. Even if that's the case, that doesn't really challenge anything. And you also have to deal with the fact that there was a lot of Gentiles that were like totally turned off by this. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. Like, this is a folly to the Gentiles. Like, it's a huge problem. You have that early graffiti of like Alexamos, I believe is his name, and he's being mocked because they have Jesus on the cross as a donkey. You have Celsus mocking this. You have Porphyry mocking this. You have Pliny causing persecuting Christians for this. I mean, like, the idea this was going to be easy for Christianity to grow in this environment is not. There's a lot of data that push back against that. I'd like to see what you're referring to.
Yeah, I didn't. It depends on what kind of scholar he's probably working off of too. But even if you grant this, I just don't really see how it's actually going to undermine the argument for the resurrection. You might even argue that this is all the more reason to think that if this is true, this is a reason to think that it did happen, because if a God existed, he would want to position the resurrection to happen in a place like that, what you're explaining. Yeah. Okay. He said he's using Fredrickson in the chat just now. That's what I figured.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of problems with that. I'm not entirely convinced that is true. I mean, like, you're asking a lot of these Gentiles to join a movement where they're going to be persecuted and hated by their surrounding culture and family, and believe in something that was mocked, because the Jews were persecuted and hated by a lot of the Gentiles of the time. Like, this is not something that a lot of them are willing to sign up on. And then the Christians started getting persecuted shortly after that. And you're asking them to join this movement where they could potentially be tortured and died. I see a lot of problems with that argument. There had to be some strong evidence to convince them otherwise, in my view. God Logic is here. He says, so cool having another mic on. It certainly is. Just so you know, God Logic and I will be at the Blessed God Summit in San Diego that Ruslan is putting on. If you guys are in San Diego, check that out. Let me get the website up there so you guys can see, because it's just blessedgodsummit.com. It's pretty simple. Let me put it up here. So yeah, we'll be here. I'll be talking on the problem of evil, doing another panel discussion. But God Logic gets to do a debate there. I'm jealous. I wanted to do a debate there, but no, he gets to do a debate. So
you guys got invited to speak. I didn't.
That's true. That's true.
I'll be here
working
arguing with people over the resurrection.
Pretty awesome. So, but yeah, it should be a pretty cool time. I'm looking forward to God Logic's debate. So yeah, if you guys want to come, there, you guys can still get tickets if you're in the San Diego area. Come out, because I'll be hanging out the whole time, kind of just being a loser, I guess. Because yeah, I really wanted to get a debate. Ruslan couldn't get anyone to actually agree to debate me. I was like, let's get a progressive Christian. I'll debate one. Got turned down by a bunch of people. So. Kind of sad about that. I was like, yeah, debates. Yeah, no, nothing. Maybe next year I could see if I get like Brandon Robertson or someone to debate me, because I want to debate him for sure. Haven't had a chance to do that. But yeah, so yep, I'll be flying out to that tomorrow. If you guys want to come out to that, yeah, please do. That'd be awesome. He says wait, did we do this one? Yeah, we did this one. Late to the stream, but didn't Josephus say that he tried to save 3 Jews after they were crucified and only 1 survived their wounds, or something like that? Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah. We have very, very little evidence of anyone surviving crucifixion. He seems to be the only one. There might be another one in Herodotus, but we're not even sure if he was nailed to the cross in that one. This is the one where it seems like this is someone who actually was crucified, and he was given the best medical attention and barely survived because his 2 friends were, they were taken out, also died. So this is just absurd when people posit the swoon theory. That's why we put that on the D tier. This is our final ranking here in terms of how we see this. Do you disagree with any of this, or did you want to move anything around in your view?
No, I mean, Maybe my mind would get changed if Thomas actually had like an established set of facts that he was working off of, but I don't know. I don't know
We
what those
are
right now.
currently working on a very longer series arguing for the resurrection. I've written a couple scripts for that already. Than is working on a script for that. The next one I'm going to start working on is the whole skeptics, why James and Paul, like trying to account for that and why the resurrection is the best explanation for why they were convinced. So it's going to be like a long series, like the gospel reliability series. We are going to, it's going to be, I'm thinking, I don't know how many videos it will end up being, maybe 15 or 20.
Yeah, I mean, before we redo the actual resurrection argument itself too, like I want to do videos on miracles.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah,
so
to help raise the prior probability.
Yeah, because we have my two powers thing, messianic expectations after that. There's a few other ones after that, and then there's miracles that I'm going to cover too.
Yeah, it's going to be a long series. I'm gonna be working on. Than's working on a video on the whole idea of messianic expectations, and that because that seems to be got popular as of recently. People trying to argue that no, this could have come around from the background knowledge, and we're going to say. There's a lot of things you guys are not thinking of when it comes to the whole messianic expectations.
Yeah.
And some problems there. So we'll be getting a script out on that as well. But yeah, it's going to be a long series we're going to be slowly putting out, as well as doing all sorts of other videos. I got a video coming out later this year on, did Paul think the world was going to end in the first century? Debunking that idea. So yeah, a lot of good stuff coming. Remember to share our videos and get them out. That actually helps them. For sure. IP, have you done a collab with William Albrecht from Patristic Pillars? He's been on the channel like 3 or 4 times in the past. I forget. I haven't had him on in a while. I think I just got sidetracked and haven't thought about him lately, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll try to have him back on. He's super, super intelligent. Had a great debate with Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, on Justin Martyr. Really schooled him on what Justin was teaching. And that went extremely well. I highly recommend you guys check out his debate with Jake, the Muslim metaphysician. Very, very good debate overall, showing Justin was a Trinitarian. I know a doctor, Baptist, who witnessed someone come back from the dead through a pastor's prayer. Just because you haven't seen it, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Yeah. I mean, that we had somebody, we're going to be in some videos in the future on evidence for miracles. I'm not saying that you can, all of miracle claims are, strong or verifiable, but there's some pretty good evidence. I mean, for some of these claims, it's kind of funny that a lot of the skeptical scholars, when they want to debunk the resurrection, they go to like the Zaytun appearance or the Fatima appearance. And it's like, it's kind of funny that they're going to places that to debunk the resurrection, they're going to other accounts of miracles or appearances that work well within the Christian worldview. And it's like, that's not really helping you. I mean, like, there's so many Protestants that are like, yeah, if the Fatima thing turns out to be legit, I'm all for it. Like, I mean, like, there's not a lot of people that are Christians that are like, no, I'm so anti-Catholic, I have to be against it. Like, not a lot that are going to fall into that boat.
When I'm done, well, I'll figure it out. But I think you will really like what I have to say about Fatima, Mike. I think you're going to be convinced.
When I've heard all the evidence for Fatima, I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. I'm not saying I'm going to throw that one out. I mean, that sounds pretty base there. I don't know.
It's pretty cool.
Just to reiterate, if Thomas Westbrook wants to come on the channel, he is more than welcome to come have a nice conversation with us on the resurrection hypothesis. He can talk to me alone, talk to Fan alone, whatever he wants, or both of us if he wants. We won't we will gang up on him, but not in the Zut sense. But also we won't. We'll try to give him a fair, equal speaking time with the two of us.
I really want to talk to him just on the topic of miracles in general too. So
well, maybe he could talk to me on the resurrection and another day talk to you on miracles, that kind of thing. That might work. But yeah, it's up to him. He wants to do that. No pressure at all. We've offered that to other atheists like Vice Rhino and never heard back from them. So, or Tom, what is that guy? Mind Shift as well. Never heard back from them.
Yeah.
So definitely out there. But I mean, hey, Fan is gonna be doing a call-in show this Thursday on the resurrection, you said?
Yep.
Well, I'm at the Bless God Summit.
Yes, sir. So skeptics, if you don't believe in the resurrection, come talk to this nice guy here on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike won't be here to get mad at me when I use math.
Yes, I will get very mad for you using math. Yeah. For sure.
Also, real quick, this week, Friday in the morning, like 8 a.m. Central Time. It's early, I know, but it's because Sijuwadi lives in Britain. We'll be doing the first Inspiring Philosophy Academy stream, and we're going to go over the monarchical aspect tribalist account of the Trinity, showing you guys one of the ways that you can make sense of the Trinity in a way that's not contradictory. And this one's really cool because it doesn't use relative identity. So
just so you guys know, I'm doing more of these comedy sketches. I uploaded a 2-minute one. It says 30 seconds here because I'm not logged in, but it's actually 2 minutes. Me doing another Dawa script thing. I just uploaded the Patreon early access. I'll upload it probably in a week or so. But if you guys want to watch that now, sign up to join our Patreon community. We lost a big donor earlier this month, or in February, that is. And so we need to get a couple more donors to make up for that. So if anyone can sign up to be a monthly donor, and I will upload all of our you'll get early access to videos and these comedy sketches I'm going to keep doing of me talking to a Dawa teacher where I am also playing. Please consider signing up to support us. We do need the support, and I will be posting these early for anyone who joins our Patreon. You can see this one is going to be on the Islamic dilemma. That's why it's like 2 minutes. I can assure you, you will enjoy this one. Than watched it.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. If you scroll back down really quickly, because my video is not out publicly yet, right?
Oh yes, this is up there too.
So for anybody curious, you've probably heard me use my new argument a little bit. That video that's coming out is basically a little pop level video to help you like work through that argument. Become a supporter so you guys can get early access to that because it's pretty based. I've had 2 philosophers reach out to me that like specialize in Islam and tell me it's really strong.
Yeah. And you know that opening song we use about Islam? You guys remember that one that we always use?
Without lies, Islam dies. Can't hide truth, can't spin those lies. Without lies, Islam dies. Dawa cries when the facts arrive.
That's on the Patreon too. That version of the song right there. You can grab it. So yeah, sign up to join Patreon, get those perks. Please consider doing that. The link is below, and that will help us make up for the our friend who was donating but had to go back to school, so he couldn't keep donating.
Yeah.
So all of you helped enormously to small Eastern Orthodox, Eastern European country without knowing it. Today is our biggest national holiday, 148 years since our freedom from living 5 centuries under Sharia. So glad you're not under that nonsense anymore. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I'm curious how we helped. I don't know what you mean, but I'm glad we helped. Sharia is evil, and we should totally do everything we can to minimize the impact of Islam in every way possible. Absolutely. So yeah, glad to hear that. Not sure how we helped, and hopefully we can come out sometime to your country to speak there at some point. That'd be awesome. But yeah, invite us out. We'll definitely do it. Anything else you want to say before we close this out?
No, sir.
All right. So Than will be live Thursday. I will be doing a call-in stream on the resurrection. I will be in the San Diego at the Blessed God Summit in the next I'll be flying out tomorrow. So come out and meet me if you're in that area. And we'll see you guys next time. We'll be back after that. We'll be back Monday for another awesome stream. Based. You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.